So we've been considering this remarkable story of Deborah and Barak, and looking at this sort of what faithful leadership can create. And we saw that the time of Deborah and Barak was a time where leadership failed, that what one person's leadership in terms of what Deborah manages to accomplish with Barak, and then what Barak manages to do with the nation, then inspires this cascading and rolling enlightenment through the nations. They all stand up to take in their inheritance and to show their leadership. And under complete oppression, the nation gets turned around on its head by one person's initiative, and how that then translates across the nation into this remarkable recovery as they take out Sisera and his army, and now they go back to take out Jabin, king of Canaan's territory, and everything that he had stolen from them. And obviously in that process, unite the nation to turn back to God once again. We've explored the lessons in leadership that show that God's purpose demands us all as individuals to stand up and to lead. And we've shown others as a young people that isn't always got to be out the front. It doesn't have to be off podiums. It doesn't have to be at the head of various things. It's behind the scenes. It's a word in season to him that is weary. It's where we see the need. It's about taking the initiative. And Deborah's example and Jael's example show us that in our own way, we ought to inspire each other as we endeavour to take ownership of our responsibilities in the truth and to show care and love one to another. And that is what leadership is actually all about. And at the end of the battle, Deborah and Barak sing this song, this beautiful duet, as it were, a song of praise and thankfulness and prophecy. And we showed that the story, obviously, the breakdown of that song is really about giving God glory, talking about how it reflected times of things in the past for her in terms of Mount Sinai, but and also the context of the nation itself, which was uttered in total disarray. We showed how Deborah blesses those that had responded and come, and how she curses those that don't. And then turns to bless Jael's heroic actions and what she did to Sisera to really put a pin in, effectively, all of Sisera and his army, and finally get rid of the real power that was holding them. And that then, in turn, she turns now in the story to depict Sisera's mother. It's almost a little bit random, isn't it? Where she turns from everything that we know in the story of Judges chapter 4, and she gives us this insight into the castle, most likely in Hazor, in the story of her mother. What is with Sisera's mother? What is that story? And then she finally concludes with a plea for God's ongoing support, a summary and a request for God's support over all his enemies. And it seems like the story of Sisera's mum is like this random addition at the end of the story, as if it's sort of there but not really relevant. Well, brothers and sisters, young people, I'll show you how relevant that absolutely is in the remarkable parable that Deborah sees unfolding before her as a beautiful prophetess, as a symbol of God's judgments that are going to be unleashed, not only just on Sisera's mother, but that this whole story, prophetically she sees, almost as if she gets transported into the future like John. It's almost as she does, and she goes, oh, this is going to be how Armageddon works, and how the subjugation of Europe is going to all come about. We're going to see that in the story. And so, here we go. Deborah and Barak turn from the scene of the carnage of Jael's tent and spin now almost to the castle in Hazor. She's going to turn from the murderous scene of Jael's tent to the royal castle with Sisera's mother. And we'll show why I think it's a royal castle and a royal scene in shortly. So why the change of scene? Well, verses 19 to 31 of Judges chapter 5 outlines the overthrow of all of Israel's enemies. And as we said in our last class, we often read the story of Deborah and Barak and the destruction of Sisera of the Battle of Judges 4 That's really what the story really was. But actually, when we read Deborah's song properly, we realise that the Battle of Judges 4 is absolutely in two parts. In part one, or otherwise known by me as the entree to the roast potatoes, roast lamb and gravy, which is going to be part two, the little hors d'oeuvres was Sisera's battle, right? So the oysters that we get for entree was actually what's talked about mostly in chapter 4. Judges chapter 4 verses 11 to 22, which outlines the battle against Sisera and the ultimate demise of his army and himself, both at the hands of Barak and at the hands of Jael. That's what's referred to in the Song of Deborah in Judges chapter 5 verses 19 to 27. But the last two verses of Judges chapter 4, which is part 2, or the real main course, is the battle against Jabin at the hand of the children of Israel and the restoration of all the cities and all of the villages that have been stolen by Jabin, king of Canaan. And Deborah's going to describe that battle in the context of one woman. The story of Sisera's mother in Judges chapter 5 verses 28 to 31. That's why we get the change in scene, because she's going to see the battle taken to the castle of Hazor and the destruction of what potentially could have been the queen of the empire. I think what we're being told, brothers and sisters, young people, is that ultimately the battle with Sisera was but the catalyst that motivated the rest of the nation of Israel to galvanize themselves as a united nation to stand up and to eradicate in utter completion the oppressive regime of Jabin, king of Canaan, with the support of Yahweh, Elohim of armies. And so what Deborah describes in the last part of her song is the events that would unfold upon the destruction of all those aligned to Jabin and his militant empire. So part of the question really is, well, why focus on Sisera's mum? What's that in the story? I think, brothers and sisters, through this we're going to be provided insight into the mind of the mother that had raised her son, Sisera, the iron-fisted captain. We're going to see what spirit drove him from her, and it's disgusting in its own glory. And I want you to notice the way she's introduced, first of all, in Judges chapter 5. If you ever, often I sit there and I think about these things, as you do, and you sit there and you say, okay, so the mother of Sisera looked out a window, and the first thing I often think about is, why describe her like that? What's the purpose of doing so? She's the mother. I said, why not just give us her name? Why not give it her title? But why the mother of Sisera? It's not her name that we find out first. It's not where she's from. It's not what she's called. It's the fact that she's the mother of Sisera. And I think in this, brothers and sisters and young people, we have a contrast being made in the story that Deborah wants us to see. And the first thing she wants to do is compare the fact that there are two mothers in the story. Do you remember what she said in Judges chapter 5 and verse 7? She said that leadership amongst the entire nation had ceased until that she, Deborah, arose a mother in Israel. Judges chapter 5 and verse 7. She's wanting to contrast the mothership role that she had played amongst the nation against the mothership role, the mother's role of Sisera. The mother of Sisera in the kingdom. One was in control of the nation of Israel, trying to breed leadership. The other was in the control of the leadership in the castle at home. And we made a comment to the teams, a bit tongue-in-cheek. But you see, whilst Dad might wear the pants, Mum tells Dad what colour to wear. And you see, this is true of life, isn't it? That with every good husband, he's often supported by an even stronger woman. It's the same for me in my household. It'd be nothing without my wife. You see, these two mothers were going to be the ones driving the empires of both stories. One, the empire of the nation of Israel, and the other one, the empire of Jabin, king of Canaan. They're going to stand for the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. This is a story of the woman in the story. We have Jael, we have Deborah, we have Sisera's mum. And yet you couldn't get a better contrast between these two mothers, could you? These two mothers were stark in their comparison. You see, this woman, Deborah, gave. She gave as a servant who offered herself and is at the top of Mount Tabor, in the heart of the very battle itself, surrounded by warriors who cared for her people, who sought their salvation and would sing praises to God for his victory. And contrasted, on the other hand, we have the mother of Sisera, who is going to be a queen, I believe, who is going to take. She's only interested in taking things from spoils. She's going to be a royal who expected to be waited on. She's got her princesses with her. And instead of being in the heat of the battle, she's in the safety of her upper chamber, as far away from the battle as she possibly could be, surrounded by her princesses, is only going to care for slaves and spoils of war, and is going to be bawling out of her window and whinging with her companions about how long it's taking for me Timmy Horton's latte and where the spoils of war are. See the woman, see the serpent. You're going to get a starker contrast between these two mothers. Each had given birth. One to Barak, the militant commander who was hesitantly not fulfilling his role, but with the support of Deborah was going to drive into battle. The other one had given birth to Sisera, whose head now lay separated from his body, pinned to the floor of a tent. You see, one mother was focused on service to others, the other focused only on herself and her ill-gotten gains. But as I see, brothers and sisters, there's so much more in this story. So we're introduced in Judges chapter 5, verse 28, to the mother of Sisera, who's doing what? She's looking out a window. There's a warning to sisters, don't look out windows, because unfortunately, the way the scripture portrays these type of women aren't too good. She's looking out of a window, and she's crying through the lattice. You know, and the word cry in Hebrew means to bawl or cry like shrilly. She's shrieking in anxiety. She's anxious. What is she anxious about? Well, I'll tell you what I don't think she's anxious about. I don't think she's anxious about whether Sisera had lost the battle. Not at all. That didn't even cross her mind. You see, there wasn't even a possibility. Israel was totally outnumbered, utterly outmaneuvered, completely outgunned. Sisera was never going to lose that battle. What she's anxiously crying about as she bawls out the window is about seeing the spoils of war. How long? How? We're waiting. It's a disgusting picture that we have. She's getting anxious about getting the evidence of the spoils of war, the plunder that they have secured from the battlefield. And we find that these are going to be, she wants more women slaves for her and fine guns. That's what she's after. It's almost like Sisera had gone off shopping and was bringing back the bags of shopping for her. Where are they? I can't wait to try them on. But she's looking out a window. And brothers and sisters and young people, Sisera's mother commences the lineage of a special breed of woman that doesn't have very good company, that gaze arrogantly out of windows. You see, we have Sisera's Sisera's mother here in Judges chapter 5, verse 28, greedily awaiting for the spoils of war. We have Michal, Saul's daughter in 2 Samuel chapter 6 and verse 16, who gazing out at her husband, who dancing his heart out as he brings the ark to Zion, ecstatic in the fact that they had finally achieved what God had wanted in his mind, arrogantly turn out and cruelly despise his actions as a king that had vaunted himself in front of all the ladies. No concept of spiritual thoughts or things. But of course we have really the ultimate type of this particular breed of individuals. Barely can call them woman. Jezebel, 2 Kings chapter 9 verse 30, who with a trowel paints her face and gets tossed out a window, callously seeking to distract Jehu from his murderous task when she knew her time was up. You see, these women became known as those who looked out a window. So you'll think about that next time you stare out your own window. Anyway, pride, arrogance, cruelty, all representing King Sin, or Queen Sin, as it were. And I want you to notice, though, verse 29, look what it says. Well, she's surrounded by who? Her wise ladies. It's quite an interesting expression, that. Her wise ladies. That's the title that gets used for princesses and noblewomen. You know, it's used in 4 other locations in the scriptures. 1 Kings chapter 11 verse 3 of Solomon's wives. Of Esther chapter 1 and verse 18 of the ladies of Persia or the wives of all the princes. It's used of Isaiah 49 verse 23 when it says that there's queens. In Lamentations chapter 1 and verse 1, which refers to the princesses. Now, I think the point that we're being made, and this is why I suggest that she's definitely part of the royal family, possibly the queen of the empire, or at least has set herself up thinking that she's possibly the queen of the empire, which may be probably more accurate, is the fact that, yes, she was. These ladies were not just her maids. These ladies in Esther chapter 1 were her royal companions. That's how it's described in Esther chapter 1. The royal companions, you see. And Sisera's mother was royalty, part of the royal family. She's possibly married to Jabin, king of Canaan, and setting herself up as potentially being the queen. She's definitely royalty, but if whatever the case, she's a lady of importance in the empire, surrounded by her royal princesses and ladies that were going to give her counsel. Now, not her slaves. And she's asking counsel of them. But you know what's remarkable in the story? She's not actually really even listening. She's just verbally commenting, as if expecting them to have an answer, but not expecting them to have one, because she cuts them off completely and entirely and answers the questions herself. He's looking at what she's asking. Why is his chariot so long in coming? Why carry the wheels of his chariot? So she's sort of muttering to herself out the window, and her companions are trying to answer the story. And she rudely and arrogantly cuts them off, answering her own questions herself. You know, her wise ladies answered her. Yeah, she returned the answer to herself. She cuts them off. I've got the answer. Don't worry about it. Go away. She rudely answers all the questions for herself. And what's the answer? Well, verse 30. Have they not speared? Have they not divided the prey? To every man a damsel or two, to Sisera a prey of divers colours, a prey of divers colours of needlework, a divers colours of needlework on both sides, meat for the necks of them that take the spoil. Well, there's a bit going on here, brothers and sisters, in this woman. Have they not spread? Have they not divided the prey? You see, this woman is not interested on the number of deaths. She's not worried about the casualties of the battlefield. There's only 2 things that this woman's interested in. It's prey and spoil. How many new damsels have the men taken as prey, and what sort of garments has Sisera gotten for her as spoil? That's what she's interested in. The word damsels is just a term of contempt, like a wench. It just means a womb. Not just the ones that have babies. Why was she interested in the damsels that were just wombs, that were interested in just having babies? You see, this woman means that she wants the number of slaves for her empire to increase. She's interested in the souls of men. We'll find that in a minute. She needs more people for serving in her house, in the house, around the yard. But more importantly, she just gets like almost obsessed with the garments. Can you see that in the story, in the record? It's like the garments, they're just something else, and her mind just gets stuck on them as she begins to sort of picture them and almost feel them. And she could see her just, touching the fabric and the cotton, the ribbon, the satin, She just gets lost in the story. The diverse colours of needlework. This is embroidery. These are special garments. These were exotic garments, made of expensive imported fabrics and cottons from Egypt and afar. Psalm 45, verse 14, Ezekiel 26:16. These are the garments of princes and of queens and royalty. These were royal garments, royal apparel. And history records, brothers and sisters, young people, that Hebrews excelled in the art of dyeing. Not as in dying, but as in dyeing of garments. And we see that in the tabernacle, in the priestly robes, in the expensive coats like Joseph, that of the Lord's garment. You see, these were prized possessions that were never going to be cut up, but were going to be cast for lots. You see, they were highly prized possessions and often treasured for life. The coat. The wools would come from Egyptian origins generally, and the excavations here reveal wool dyeing was a legendary leading industry in central Israel. And I've dug all this up. But I wanted to know who the garments ultimately were for. Because a better translation for when she's talking about these garments, she says, the spoils of diverse colours raiment for Sisera, the spoils of diverse colours raiment embroidered, coloured raiment richly embroidered from the necks of those who were taken as spoil. She's actually referring to female garments. She was interested in getting these garments on herself. You see, she was expecting Sisera, not the guys going into battle on the paddock at the foot of Mount Tabor weren't wearing these priestly special garments, were they? They were wearing garments for battle. What she was expecting was that not only would Sisera have wiped out those men, pesky 10,000 men coming down the hill on foot that had no weaponry, but that they had been turned and sacked all of these Jewish cities and villages and taken them from all the ladies, all of the wonderful, like going shopping in a shopping mall, just going in and taking whatever they wanted. And they brought these special garments home for us, she says. They're going to make meat for the ones who have taken as spoil. They're going to be ours. She was interested in getting the things for herself. And Sisera's mother, if you're going to colour two words in this story, you're going to colour the words pray, in verse 30, at the start, and spoil, at the end of verse 30. She's interested in spoil and pray. And of course, anyone with ears to hear will have heard that Bible echo before. And I think this song, as I've said, focuses on the two phases of the battle against Sisera and the destruction there of Sisera's mother, because here, prophetically displayed in the type, is the two-stage victory of all things. Just like we have the stone that smites Goliath's head, and then David taking the sword to cut the head off. Just as we see in Daniel chapter 2, the smashing of the image to feet, and then the grinding of it to powder, we're going to see the overthrow of Gog and the victory of Armageddon and the subjugation of Europe and the mother of all harlots. You see, the battle against Sisera and the defeat of Jael is but just the prelude to the main event. The battle of Armageddon and the destruction of Gog is but just the start of what's going to come. And following the battle against Jabin, main course was going to be the battle against Jabin and Sisera's mother, which was going to be the subjugation of Europe and the overthrow and subjugation of Catholic Europe and the mother of all harlots. The events are set before us in absolute detail and precision in the story to perfectly describe the events subsequent to Christ's return. And here it is. You can't miss the story. You see, in phase 1, in Sisera's demise and the Gogian invasion and the destruction of Armageddon, we see Sisera's confederate army gathered from all of the Gentiles, met at Harlot of the Gentiles. And we find in Ezekiel 38, and it's probably easier if we just sit there in Ezekiel 38 as we work through the story, because we now know the story of Deborah and Barak. But in Ezekiel 38, we've got Gog from the land of Magog, the chief prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal. And he's going to gather a huge company together, made with swords and bucklers and shields. And it's going to be a confederate army of Persia, Ethiopia, Libya, and all that are with them. Shield and helmet, Gomer and all his band, the house of Dagama. And where are they going to come? From the north parts. That's where Hazel was, you see. Hazel was in the north parts. Here's Jabin, king of Canaan. And so Sisera and his confederate army is going to gather together, and it's going to be full, says Ezekiel 38, of swords and shields and chariots and horsemen, just as Sisera's army was. And that Yahweh would fight against Sisera and would go out before him in the story. So also God's fury was going to come, and he was going to draw him down, it says. I'll be in control of this, don't you worry, Gog. I've got this covered. I will draw unto thee, says the record of Sisera's story. And of course, what God does is he says to Gog, you reckon you're in control? Really? You're going to have a hook through your horse's nose, and I'm going to lead you to battle. I will take thee, I will bring thee forth, he says, verse 4. And all thine army, and all thy horses, and all thy horsemen, and all them that are clothed with all sorts of armour, and you're going to come to the very spot to be nailed. And Sisera's motivation, we know from the story of Ezekiel 38, verse 12, is that everyone says, well, he's going down to the land of unwalled villages with this evil thought, and people go, what are you down here for? To take a spoil and to take a prey, and to turn thine hand upon the desolate places that are now inhabited. You see, here's the story of Armageddon. And his army gathered is going to be a great company, and that God would cause a great shaking in the land with rain and hail and fire and brimstone. And a sword would go out against Gog, says Ezekiel 38, verse 21. I'm going to call for a sword against them. And of course, in the story of Judges chapter 4, we find that every man, all the host of Sisera, fell upon the edge of the sword. And Sisera's destruction, just as it was prophesied from Deborah, was going to be prophesied by the prophets before them. This is whom, art thou he of whom I have spoken in old time by my servants the prophets, and that the enemies would flee, that Yahweh's saints would come, Zechariah chapter 14, and ultimately not a man would be left. They'd be all destroyed, and Ezekiel 39 says, thou shalt fall upon the mountains of Israel, thou and all thy bands and the people that are with thee, and I will give thee unto the ravenous birds of every sort, and to the beasts of the field to be devoured. Thou shalt fall upon the open field, for I have spoken it, saith Adonai Yahweh. And here, brothers and sisters, is the story of Sisera, so clearly set out as a type of Gog himself, leading forth his confederate host and his ultimate destruction, foreshadowed by the work of Christ and the saints in the march of the rainbowed angel, the arrival of the man of Bozrah from Isaiah 63, who's going to shine forth from Mount Seir and who marches from Sinai into the sanctuary. You can hear all the echoes of Deuteronomy 33 that we've already talked about. All the story here mapped out before. We get the march of the rainbowed angel, all again the work of Christ and the redeemed and glorified saints coming to destroy the oppressor of God's people in his land. Oh, it's all here, isn't it, brothers and sisters, in the type of the destruction of Sisera. And so you would expect, therefore, as the type and battle of the destruction of Sisera was the entree to the roast and potatoes. The overthrow of Jabin and the taking back of the stolen city was the gravy of the roast coming out now. Armageddon was just the prelude to the battle against Jezebel and the mother of harlots and the conquest of Catholic Europe. You see Daniel's two stages, the smashing the image to defeat and now the grinding of the image to powder. Of course, there was going to be no more fitting symbol of the harlot system of Catholic Europe. The depiction of Jezebel surrounded by her daughters, which have made themselves drunk with the blood of the saints. Now what is depicted here in the story of Sisera's mother, surrounded by her wise ladies, dreaming of the spoils of war and merchandise. So even as the destruction of Sisera was but just the catalyst to bring the nation together as they sought to restore their territories that they had lost to Jabin, king of Canaan, the representation of King Sin, lorded over by Sisera's mother. We see depicted in Jezebel II, the woman looking out the window, the mother of harlots, the abomination of the earth, the great whore, to whom the kings of the earth hath committed fornication. See, Jabin was once more the king of all the kingdoms, as he was in Joshua 11. And here he was again. And just look at the picture painted for us in Revelation 17 and 18, and you can't miss it. You see, here is the woman who already had the coloured garments. She's stolen them. She's arrayed, it says, in purple and scarlet, sitting as a queen. I mean, just hold your hand and just ponder in this as we look through it in Revelation 17 and 18. It's just remarkable, isn't it? She's living deliciously off the delicacies of the things that she has stolen. Revelation 17 verse 4 it says, so he carried me away, verse 3, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-covered beast, full of the names of blasphemy. And the woman, it says, was arrayed in purple and scarlet colour, multicoloured garments, with decked in gold and precious stones and pearls. Look at verse 16 of Revelation 18. It says, and here again is the city. You see, the Alaska great city that was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls. You can't miss this woman. She's taken the spoils of war for sure. But this woman, Revelation 18 verse 7, look at this. She had glorified herself. Isn't that the spirit of Sisera's mother? She's glorified herself and lived deliciously, for she hath said, so much torment and sorrow give her, for she hath said in her heart, I sit as a queen and am no widow. Why was she no widow? Oh, it would suggest that she lost a son. Exactly. Sisera's gone. I'm no widow, she says, and I see no sorrow. I haven't lost my boy. What are you talking about? Here it is. Here's the woman who may not have been the queen, but is sitting as such, thinking she's so important, and who rules, it says, with many peoples and nations and multitudes, and who by working with the merchants of the earth was controlling trade, and had waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And what does this system, brothers and sisters, what is this system interested in? Well, Revelation chapter 18, verse 12 to 14 says that she's interested in merchandise and slaves and the souls of men. You see, she's interested in the merchandise. She's weeping, verse 11. The merchants are going to weep with her when they can't do this trade with her anymore. They're going to weep over her. No man buys any more merchandise. Well, what merchandise is that? Well, it's everything. Gold, silver, precious stones, pearls, linen, silk, scarlet, pine wood, all manner of vessels of ivory, most precious wood, brass, iron, marble, cinnamon, odours, ointments, frankincense, wine, oil, fine flour, wheat, beasts, sheep, horses, chariots. Right? All of this merchandise. Oh, and the other thing she says, the other thing they go is we can no longer trade in the souls of men anymore. She's interested in the goods and merchandise and the slaves, the souls of men. And of course, Revelation is going to depict for us the destruction of this woman, which will be swift and unexpected. It'll all come in 1 hour, says Revelation 18. She will be rewarded double for her works. It was coming, just like Christ and the saints, that'll come and absolutely obliterate Catholic Europe, depicted by the saints of Israel's territory, coming and taking out the territory. It'll all come when she least expected. But come over the page to Revelation chapter 18. Look what it says. Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for God hath avenged you on her. Rejoice, says the record. And when you read Revelation 19, you just need to colour in the 4 alleluias of Revelation 19. Praise ye Yahweh. They're going to sing with this loud voice, a great voice of much people in heaven saying, Alleluia, verse 1. Alleluia, verse 4, verse 3. Alleluia, verse 4. Alleluia, verse 6. Praise ye Yahweh. Of course, Deborah starts her song, doesn't she, brothers and sisters, with this expression in Judges chapter 4. What does she say? Judges chapter 4, verse 1. Judges chapter 5 and verse 1. Praise ye Yahweh for the avenging of Israel. Alleluia, she says. Verse 9, my heart is toward the governors of Israel, Judges chapter 5, verse 9, that offer themselves willingly among the people. Bless ye Yahweh. Here's the saints rejoicing, bursting forth in song, giving thanks and praise to Almighty God, who hath kept his promise, because he hath avenged his people. So, brothers and sisters and young people, the destruction of Sisera, followed by the annihilation of the mother of all harlots, really foreshadows the work of Christ and the saints and the Jews in their work in Armageddon and the subjugation of the nations and ultimately the cleansing of Catholic Europe. And by this process, Yahweh will redeem and avenge his people who have cried to be saved and to cause his kingdom to be established once more, and to usher in that time of rest that everybody was so desperately hoping for. And in the story of Judges chapter 5, it says, and here's the rest, you see, that the land had rest for 40 years. It's an absolute stunning and remarkable prophetic type that Deborah sees before her in the panorama of history as she is revealed to her as the prophetess. She's just mind-blown as to what's actually happening in the story. And she paints it in a way that the record wants us to see that God is in control of all things. The divine stamp of the prophecy of Armageddon and the subjugation of Europe just goes bang, bang, bang through history, doesn't it? To give us utter confidence that we know that God will bring about his purpose. But look at the way she finishes her song. Come back to Judges chapter 5. So she says, verse 31, ultimately this is a song for all time. So let all thine enemies perish, O Yahweh. But let them that love him be as the sun when he goeth forth in his might. Let them that love thee, or love him, be as the sun, the brilliant, radiant sun when it goes forth in all its strength. And here, brothers and sisters, Deborah beautifully and poetically pictures the work of the saints like the sun as it bursts forth in its full glory and brilliance, the rays of which shine in burning fury to have victory and vengeance over all his enemies. But I don't know if you've noticed, but to use a very specific expression, but them that love him be as the sun when he goeth forth. Do you know, she said that expression in the story quite a few times. And she sees those who went out against their enemies encaptured in the sun. You see, Barak and his men went out in Judges chapter 4, verse 14 and 16, on foot to meet Sisera. It's the same word, the going forth. Here it is. It's Jael, it says, when she went out to meet Sisera. It's God himself in Judges chapter 4, verse 14 and 5, verse 4, when he went out before Barak. It's the tribes who responded that went out to serve. She says, we've seen this before. We've seen this before. These people were like those who voluntarily jeopardized their lives in service to their brethren to bring about Yahweh's judgments. This is who we need to see. People with action, people with initiative, people who volunteer. This is what we need, she says. And they're all throughout time going to stand up and go forth. Brothers and sisters, here's the lesson. This is the lesson for us. You see, this is the spirit of the volunteer. This is the spirit of the one who gives, the one who leads, the one who shows care. And we will all in this, says Deborah, be like the sun going forth in strength if we take the initiative to bring Yahweh's enemies to naught. It's a vivid and glorious picture, she says, of the sun when it bursts forth in its might. And do you know, brothers and sisters and young people, I've only ever found that expression one other time in the rest of the Bible. If you find it more than this, please let me know. The sun going forth in its might. Do you know where it's from? It's not Malachi. That's healing in its beams. The sun going forth in its might. Come with me to Revelation chapter 1. Come and have a look at what the picture is of the multitudinous Christ that John sees in Revelation chapter 1. Of course, it's Yahweh and his saints and the 10,000 men. You see, the vision that John sees is going to reveal to him the things which are and the things which shall be hereafter. The one who's going to bring all of that to pass is the one who's going to bring the enemies to naught. And the message of the man of the one is pictured in Revelation chapter 1, verses 10 to 16. In Revelation, and the prophecies of the future and the judgment that are going to be poured out upon the enemies of God is going to be given and executed by a man who is likened unto the Son of Man. And this one, likened unto the Son of Man, was going to execute judgment and vengeance and establish the kingdom of God. It's not just Christ, brothers and sisters, is it, in this story? It's not just Christ, but a picture of the multitudinous Christ body who is manifested in full glory because he's there with the saints. You see, John sees one like unto the Son of Man because they've been perfected. This is the glorified saints, and they are with priestly clothing, the saints perfected as priests. They've got golden girdles. They're immortalized saints, ministering to the needs of others in active service. He's got hair like wool and he's white because these are the saints who have washed their blood, washed their robes in the blood of the Lamb. He's got eyes with a flame of fire, the intelligence in judgment, executing God's vengeance. He's got feet of incandescent brass. These are the saints going forth to tread down the wicked, to execute Yahweh's divine judgment on the earth as the voice of many waters, because these are the perfected saints gathered together out of all peoples, nations, and languages. And in his right hand, he's got 7 stars. You see, this is all of the ecclesias. This is all of the tribes of Israel, as it were, together. All of the 7 ecclesias there that are gathered together. All of them united as one unit. He's got it in control. Out of his mouth comes a 2-edged sword, the perfected saints that would execute judgment by providing God's message that would come out of their mouth, in contrast to the things that would come out of the mouth of the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. This is the perfected saints that would give God's word in judgment and in saving. But above all this, brothers and sisters, look at what it says. What is his countenance like? What is the spirit with which he goes out with? Look at what it says. Revelation chapter 1 verse 16. And his countenance, it says, was as the sun shining in his strength. You see, I think, quote unquote, brothers and sisters, that's Judges chapter 5 verse 31. Judges chapter 5 verse 31. This is the sun shining in his strength. And here is the reenactment of the way in which the saints would participate in assisting Yahweh execute the vengeance on all his enemies. That's the countenance of the man of the world. The spirit of the willing volunteers who will bring all of Yahweh's enemies to naught and to make them perish. Let them be, she says, like the sun when it goes forth in its might. In the book of Revelation, just like the song of Deborah, was a message of hope, a message of relief for all those saints throughout time that could have confidence that God will work, that God will bring about his purpose, that God will rule in the kingdoms of men and ultimately overthrow his enemies. And just as it was a message of warning, just as a message of hope and relief, it was also a message of warning and counsel, wasn't it, to those to stand apart, to choose to serve God, to be part of the volunteers who give. You see, these 2 books are recorded as messages to support the saints, especially those under trial and tribulation and oppression, to realize that God will never cast aside those who love him and that truly seek his face in sincerity and truth. And so John is shown the revelation by a man who represented the 10,000 of Yahweh's saints, glorified, immortalized volunteers, ready to lead captivity captive and to bring into subjection all of Yahweh's enemies to save his people. What a magnificent story, brothers and sisters. And a lesson for all of us, that today, each day, we have to choose to stand up, that we might go forth and actively serve our God, willingly, wholeheartedly, with all our heart and soul and mind, to give as we've been given, and to show care to one another, that God's purpose might be fulfilled in us.